They laid the groundwork for some of the best-known IP in all of gaming history. Games like Assassin's Creed, Rayman, Watch Dogs, the newest South Park games, and Far Cry series. All these games have something fresh and entertaining to offer in their own right, but there's a problem lying away in most of these games mentioned. One word stands out like a sore thumb: copying. Recently, I've been playing Far Cry 5 and have enjoyed the series starting at free. The story and open world brought me in. I loved Voss and the story of Jason slowly losing his mind in the jungle. Story missions were unique and had their own objectives, while there was a side content to do like claim bases, towers, and racing cars. In its best way, it can be described as a single-player game infused perfectly with an open-world experience. Far Cry 4 did the same thing, but the missions weren't as varied, nor was the story as interesting or villains. Far Cry 5, just released a couple months ago, took a completely different direction for the Far Cry series. The main question is, why did they? It's a deep answer, one that requires the utmost care if to be answered correctly. I've broken the main reason into 3 parts. One is what open world games are doing right now in the modern age of gaming, which is openness. Second, Ubisoft's own problem with game originality and game objectives. Third is in its story development and single-player gaming. Let's jump into the first one. It's been no surprise that Ubisoft has been the leader and major producer of open-world games right next to PlayStation as of late. Looking back for the small beginnings of Assassin's Creed series to the large-scale adventures of AC Origins, it's safe to say that Ubisoft has expanded and gotten bigger as the games have too. But bigger isn't always better. Worlds can be left empty, filled with meaningless tasks to do that don't really have a significance in the world. Some can say this is just filler content to keep the player occupied till the next big story mission is available. Think of it as a scenery before getting to your intended destination. But instead of having an intended destination laid out to you specifically, Ubisoft decided to throw you a map and say, we're not going to tell you exactly where to go, you have to figure that part out yourself. That's not bad if it's done right. Looking back at Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, that game seemed to do just fine with its mission structure and open worldness. I actually love that game a lot. The reason why Breath of the Wild works and Ubisoft-style games don't is in its world layout and mission variety/uniqueness. Breath of the Wild was able to make each shrine unique in its own way without making it repetitive, even though there were 120 shrines in the base game. Breath of the Wild also shielded the main objective by giving bigger dungeons to do for the main story and other side objectives besides shrines. Where Ubisoft games like Wildlands and Far Cry 5 falter is in its lack of main objectives. The side objectives in old Far Cry games are the main objectives in Far Cry 5. When the world layout and mission structure is put in perspective, there's no room for originality and success. Right when I was playing Far Cry 5, my first thought was how similar it was to Ghost Recon Wildlands' mission structure. Far Cry 5 sets up a grand and scary story right from the beginning, but then takes you out of that experience to do side missions like clear camps and the rest I mentioned in the beginning of the video. Wildlands does the same thing, with doing the same tasks over and over again to eventually kill the boss of the territory to get to the main boss and finish the game. This is exactly the same idea used in Far Cry 5. Instead of killing drug lords, you are killing the Seed family, which runs the cult in Hope County, Montana. There's nothing wrong with the strategy of objectives and gameplay, but when the same missions are being done with a different coat of paint, it gets repetitive and boring over time, especially when you notice the trend like I have. It pains me more to see this, knowing that the Far Cry series has done better in their past installments. Part of me believes they changed the formula because players were getting tired of the series like Assassin's Creed, but look at what Assassin's Creed Origins did for the franchise. They revived the player base because they took time off and looked at the franchise for what it meant to players and the key parts of what make AC. I think Far Cry 5 didn't see the picture, and instead looked at the success of Wildlands and thought they could copy that and still reap the same benefits and rewards. But they are two different IP, and that should be treated differently as a whole. What pains me the most is knowing that there are great missions hidden in the game as side missions. For example, there's a mission where you have to help a crazed scientist named Larry who wants to meet aliens. You have to do some outlandish things like find alien rocks and go around crop circles. It reminds me of the days of Far Cry 3 when you had to burn down a weed plantation while listening to dubstep music. I just wish they were the main piece of content like in the past. Makes me wonder if Far Cry is going to come back at all for a while, and I hope they take a break and find out what makes Far Cry, Far Cry. The final point is about single-player gaming and story-focused games. Most of Ubisoft's games are single-player focused adventures in the open-world setting. Looking at my collection of games from Ubisoft, I would say 95% are open-world games, but the best aren't story-driven games. I would like to see Ubisoft take a different approach to this and instead focus on story. It would be awesome for Ubisoft to have a true linear game with an amazing story. Almost in God of War style, where you can go back to other regions of the map, but there is still a mainline story to go on. This would be the sweet spot for Ubisoft to show their true love of craftsmanship of world building, but also be able to show and tell an impactful story I remember for years to come. I remember key story moments from the Far Cry series, and I know they would be able to capture the same magic if they chose this path. There have been moments in Far Cry 5 where they do focus on story, but it's rare and doesn't show the true advancement of what they achieve. You'll be taken by each member of the Seed family, where they'll have some monologue, make you do something for their bidding, and then go out into the world and repeat again. It's nice to see how each member of the family acts differently and what they attribute with the cult, but I just wished they were in the game more and had a presence in the world. I'm not here to say that all Ubisoft games are horrible. In fact, I think most are great 8 out of 10 experiences. I'm waiting for the best experience from Ubisoft, one that is put up for Game of the Year and pushes the boundaries for open world games and story. Maybe we will see that with Assassin's Creed Odyssey, but we all remember how AC Unity turned out.
Hello darkness, my old friend, I've come to talk with you again.
Will Ubisoft be able to get out of the purgatory they set up for themselves? Time will only tell. Until then, I'm going back to play some Far Cry 5.